What do rationing, camouflage, and candy stripes have to do with wrapping paper? At first glance, the idea sounds almost absurd. How could something as ordinary as a roll of wrapping paper possibly be tied to the greatest conflict of the 20th century? But the truth is, the way we wrapped gifts in the 1940s tells a whole story about wartime shortages, patriotism, longing, and hope. In fact, each ribbon and fold of brown paper carried with it the spirit of an entire generation. So today, let's step back into a cozy living room in 1943. The radio humming Bing Crosby's "I'll Be Home for Christmas." A victory garden visible just outside the frosted window. And a mother carefully folding up last week's newspaper to wrap a gift bound for her husband stationed overseas. Before we explore further, make sure you subscribe and share the idea you like the most. This is the story of wartime wrapping paper, where practicality met sentimentality, and simple paper became a symbol of love, resilience, and national pride. Wartime constraints. During World War II, nothing was spared from rationing. Sugar, butter, gas, and yes, even paper. Families were encouraged to save scraps, recycle, and repurpose everything possible for the war effort. Massive paper drives were organized in cities and towns, where children dragged wagons stacked high with old magazines and cardboard to help supply the mills. That meant glossy wrapping paper, which had been rising in popularity in the 1930s, suddenly felt like an unnecessary luxury. Instead, families leaned into what they had: brown butcher's paper from the grocery store, bits of fabric from worn-out dresses, or the daily newspaper tied neatly with red yarn. Some mothers got creative with flour sackcloth, printed in colorful patterns by the mid-1940s, specifically because manufacturers knew women would reuse the fabric for sewing and wrapping. It wasn't glamorous, but it was resourceful. And to the kids of the time, it didn't matter. What mattered was the gift itself: a hand-carved toy, a knitted pair of socks, maybe a box of hard-to-find candy. The wrapping was humble, but the meaning was rich. Rise of print and patriotic designs. And yet, even in the midst of war, human creativity found a way to bloom. Printing companies, eager to keep morale high, began producing small runs of patriotic-themed wrapping paper. They were cheerful, bold, and unashamedly symbolic. You'd see Santa Claus carrying American flags, or smiling soldiers marching alongside snowmen. The V for victory symbol popped up everywhere, emblazoned on posters, buttons, and yes, even on holiday wrapping sheets. Red, white, and blue became the holiday palette, alongside the classic greens and reds. Some designs even leaned into camouflage patterns, a strange, almost ironic way of dressing up a gift, making it festive and military at the same time. Others featured stamps and postal motifs, inspired by the fact that so many gifts were being mailed across the world. Think of it, a mother standing in Woolworths, choosing between wrapping paper decorated with stars and stripes, or one covered in war bonds, slogans like "Buy Victory," and knowing that every sheet she bought was both a personal expression and a small patriotic gesture without the emotional pull. But perhaps the most poignant part of wartime wrapping wasn't the design. It was the purpose. Millions of packages traveled across the ocean during those years, bound for soldiers in Europe, Africa, and the Pacific. Imagine opening a care package in a muddy tent somewhere in Italy in 1944. Inside, there's a tin of cookies, a handwritten letter, and a small wrapped parcel. The paper might be creased, the ink smudged, but to that young soldier, it was gold. It was proof of home. Some families even tucked in tiny mementos, pressed flowers, locks of hair, family photos. The wrapping became more than packaging. It was an emotional lifeline. Mothers would write little notes right on the paper. "Merry Christmas from home. We love you, Johnny." And when that paper was torn open, It was often folded carefully and saved, tucked into the pages of a diary or the lining of a uniform. Pocket, sticker angle, and here's where the story gets fun for us today. Those war-era motifs, stamps, ration labels, patriotic slogans are now inspiring a whole new aesthetic. Imagine sticker sheets covered with vintage wartime designs, little Victory V emblems, Santa waving a flag, postmark-style circles that look like they've been stamped by the U.S. Army Postal Service. For collectors, scrapbookers, or just lovers of nostalgia, these patterns bridge the gap between history and creativity. It's like holding a tiny piece of 1940s sentimentality in your hands. And when you peel one off and place it on a modern-day gift, suddenly you're wrapping not just a present, but a story. The home front details. To really understand why wrapping mattered, you have to picture the home front. Mothers and grandmothers knitting by the fireplace. RDIO shows, like the Jack Benny program or Fibber McGee and Molly, filling the living room with laughter. Children cutting out stars from construction paper to decorate windows. Victory gardens in the backyard, tended by teenagers while their fathers fought abroad. Gifts themselves were often handmade. A daughter might stitch an apron from leftover fabric. A son might whittle a toy plane from scrap wood. Sometimes, the wrapping was half the fun. Kids would draw little doodles on plain brown paper, turning it into a one-of-a-kind creation. Hollywood even joined in the spirit. Stars like Judy Garland, Bing Crosby, and the Andrews Sisters performed at USO shows, encouraging people to send gifts and letters to the troops. Keep their hearts warm this Christmas, one ad urged. And companies leaned in, advertising soap, cocoa, even cigarettes as perfect holiday gifts for him overseas, often showing a package neatly, wrapped in patriotic paper. The printing industry and aesthetic choices. There's another layer to this too, the psychology of design. Color shortages meant printers had to get clever. Blue dyes, for example, were harder to come by, so reds and greens took center stage. Fonts became bold and simple, easy to print, easy to read. Some wrapping paper even carried subliminal messaging. Victory Bonds ads were woven into the patterns. Cartoon soldiers with grins reminded buyers, "We're counting on you." It was marketing, yes, but it was also morale boosting. Every wrapped gift was a reminder that the war was being fought, not just on battlefields, but in kitchens, factories, and stores. Post-war echoes. When the war finally ended in 1945, something magical happened. Suddenly, materials were no longer rationed, and people wanted beauty again. The late 1940s saw an explosion in bright, cheerful wrapping paper. Floral prints, glitter, metallic foils, luxuries that had been absent for so long. But interestingly, those war-era designs didn't vanish entirely. They became nostalgic almost instantly. Families remembered those brown paper-wrapped gifts with tenderness. Soldiers who returned often kept a folded square of wrapping from a Christmas package, tucked away as a keepsake. And today, when you find authentic 1940s wrapping paper at an antique shop, it feels like holding history in your hands, a reminder of resilience, hope, and the deep human need to make even the smallest things feel special. So here's the takeaway. Wrapping paper may seem trivial, but in the 1940s, it carried weight. It was patriotic, practical, sentimental, and deeply human. It tied together families separated by oceans. It turned scarcity into creativity. And it transformed ordinary paper into a vessel of love. Your grandparents, or maybe even great-grandparents, probably wrapped gifts this way. With care, with meaning, with heart. So maybe this year, instead of glossy rolls from the store, try brown paper, red yarn, or even a vintage-inspired sticker or two. Not just for the aesthetic, but for the story. Because in the end, that's what wrapping has always been. A story told in folds, ribbons, and patterns. Bring it back. Sticker by sticker. Memory by memory.